First met him, I think I might have been at a pub in suburban Melbourne, and then I didn't sort of know he could sing, and he was just a surfy kind of guy. And then he started coming up to this part of Melbourne called Eltham, which was a kind of hippie kind of community, and I was playing in bands up there, and he used to come up on the weekends and party with us. And he was a kind of different kind of guy because he was gregarious and kind of out there, and then we sort of worked out he could sing, and he had this really kind of high voice, which was interesting. It was almost choir boyish, and you could tell he wanted to be involved in the bands we're in, because he used to lug our equipment around because he had a combi van. And so we kind of took advantage of that for a while, and then we let him sing it, I think, a couple of times, and thought, well, this is kind of interesting. And so that became the beginnings of this group called The Frame, which was myself, Freddie Strauchs, he was the drummer of Skyhooks, and Shirley Strawn. But he was still very reserved on stage, or almost shy. But off stage, he was, rambunctious. That group split up, and he went surfing, I think, and working on a fishing boat.
A serious change in not just music, in look, in lyrics, talking about Australia, and it really was just so extreme to everything else that had been done that they just came from nowhere and really, I guess, had such incredible impact because of their uniqueness.
I think with Skyhooks, the first incarnation of it got a lot of interest because we would just look really weird, and we were finding our feet kind of musically, just how we related to each other. And Steve Hill left after the first Sunbury concert, and we were in a bit of a bind because we knew we kind of had some interest from the audience, and we had shows booked actually, but no singer. So it became a matter of necessity to get someone to fill the vocalist's shoes, and Shirl came to mind. And I remember Freddie and myself drove down to Phillip Island because Shirl didn't have a telephone in his house, looking for him, just on the vague hope that maybe he wanted to get back into the musical thing, because I think it had been a year or two that he'd left the previous band. Anyway, we got there, he wasn't home, and the guy said, he's just decided to go back and live in Melbourne, so that afternoon. So we must have passed each other on the highway. So we did a U-turn and went back to Melbourne and found him and said, do you want to come and sing in this band, because we need you? And he said, okay. And I said, well, there's a couple of rules with this band. It's not quite as laissez-faire as the other one. One, you got to dress up. Two, you got to keep your nickname, which was Shirley. And three, you have to be the kind of guy on stage that you are off stage.
I got to tell you, it was definitely that the Skyhooks thing was chemistry on every level. It was a chemistry within the band. It was chemistry with Wilson. In the first two albums, that recording, because all that batch of songs were there from the beginning. And then the real chemistry was with the audience, and Shirley had a huge part of that, because we had a band, of all us guys out there doing our thing, but really you've got to have that energy, you've got to have the sort of focus for your energy to take it out. So you've got to have the glue between the band and the audience, and Shirl he had that. That's what was really fantastic about him. That was his star quality, and he had that from day one. People can say, you either like his singing or you don't. There's a very sort of, it's like a bit of an acquired taste. He had a fantastic, distinctive voice. It was really clear. It cut through every little tiny little transistor anywhere you wanted to listen to it, right? So it was this incredible voice. But whether it was a great voice was really up to your own, taste. But what he really was a performer, and he could get out there and he'd just cut it with anyone. And that's where we forged ahead, because when it came down to it, what we used to do was get on and try and blow the headline off, right? And so he was really in with that. So we'd sort of concentrate on trying, doing something interesting for, on musically. And of course he'd be up there carving the audience up, and so it just worked really well.
They were so different, they were so special. Once Shirley joined that group, I was very confident, and the missing ingredient, or the final link, was the starting of Countdown, because if you could have planned it, you would be a genius, knowing that television was going to become such a part of music. And obviously bands that I were involved with and bands that I cut my teeth with, like the, Thorpe and the Aztecs and The Chain and Carson and Healing Force and people like that. GTK was fantastic. It was in black and white, and thank God it was. Countdown hit the screens, colour television, and you couldn't have planned or made a band more suitable and more able to just take that lens. As people talk today about the camera loves Kylie. Well, the cameramen, the people behind the producers and the directors, everyone loved Skyhooks because they put on a show, they brought ratings, and consequently everything around it worked. The television show went up in ratings, we sold records, and it was just a win-win for everyone. When they were on, they were unstoppable.
He had a natural gift as far as singing went. I mean, he always sang in tune, which is it's kind of difficult to do all the time, So he had a great ear, and we worked closely in the studio with using that. And he would, I had a sort of different view on phrasing on some things, but he would listen to me and he'd sort of try out the ideas I suggested, and I was always really grateful for that. But on the other hand, because it was such a natural gift, he sort of was a bit flippant about it. It was just something he could do, and his interests were actually elsewhere. He was interested in being in the spotlight and on stage, but I don't think it was until much later that he actually started to realise that the singing side of thing was something that you could work on and enjoy. In fact, I heard Paul Christie from the Party Boys played me some live tapes with Shirl as in Party Boy mode, where he was just sounded fantastic. So that was a few years down the track. But I don't think he didn't kind of work real hard at it. It was just something that came to him, And this always bemused me because, I was a person who was always had to work on what I'm doing, think hard about what I'm singing and work things out, and he would just jump up and just go, just it'd sound great, and then I'd just help polish it up.
He kind of knew how to relate to those people and communicate with them, and from a songwriter's point of view, he had an excellent diction. You always knew that it didn't matter how lousy the sound system was, those words were going to get through. And that's kind of a huge plus.
He didn't like it when the band started to argue. He didn't like it. He liked making decisions, and he liked moving with them. He felt that perhaps him and I were held back from taking the band to a lot of places we wanted to take the band. Him and I worked as a really good team. He'd get me up in the morning, he'd make my cup of tea, and he'd drive me to his first interview. That's what Shirley was like. And I think when it became difficult and it wasn't that much fun, he used to just piss off. He pissed off to England once and got married, and even we thought we were looking for a new lead singer.
He was always into surfing and skiing and all these kind of activities which most musicians are not, and I'm certainly not. So, as much as he was, if he had something to focus on, but I think, we did achieve, incredible kind of success in a very short space of time, and so the question was, well, kind of what's next? And I think perhaps not just for him, but, the concept of going to America and was very much about repetition, and I can understand why people would get bored with sitting on the bus for this 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years you have to do, and so he was just looking for more kind of stimulation.
He worked himself into this sort of scenario where he thought, well, that's where I can move forward, and he did, and it's just like, in his way, he developed a style from that point on where it was take no prisoners, I'm my own man, I will do this, and so he launched into that, I think it was Shirl's Neighbourhood, and that was a fantastic show, and then he worked that TV scene, and he just grew with it.
And he was determined that very few bands have been able to have such a gap and then come back and have a number 1 hit record, not a top 40 record, a number 1. And I don't know how we did it, but the band, I guess, was so loved. It was just, again, a witty, different type of song, and it just happened. But he was determined. By this stage, he was much more involved in the management of the band again, and it was the Shirl of old. It was like, you know, he'd be on my back. What else can I do? Not, do I have to do any more? And that was that kind of attitude that made so many things happen and made me as a manager look good.
I mean, he took that to a level which was sort of beyond what I'd even anticipated, because from a writer's point of view, you have a vision for the tune, and sometimes that vision gets realised, and sometimes you come a bit under the mark. But he sort of took it into an area which was better than I could have dreamed of, and so plus it had that great intensity and passion, which when he rose to that occasion, it was extremely exciting.
And I reckon he would have killed him again, because that's the sort of guy that he was. Whatever he did, whether it was come in and fix the cupboards in my office as the little carpenter, the great bloke that he was, that was Shirley Strawn, and so many people will miss him, and like I said, there was only one Skyhooks.